Welcome to Monolith Motors and our low buck buildup. We're going to take this 1995 Chevrolet Caprice Wagon and turn it into an Impala SS clone. Not much rust on the car, but we do have a spot up here on the leading edge of the hood that we're going to have to deal with. Of course, we'll replace that old grille and the hood ornament there. On the sides here, we've got a lot of this plastic trim that's coming apart and fading, so we'll clean that up and paint it body color. Here are some of the parts we'll be using to update the wagon. There's some Impala Ss Rims, got those rattle can charcoal and wrapped in some fresh rubber. Got a real nice grille that's painted black, so we'll repaint that blue to match. And got some of the trim pieces, so when people check the car out, they're going to be wondering if GM ever made an Impala SS wagon. I'm going to start by removing this trim around the wheel well. So that's a big improvement in our wagon. Just a little bit of work to change the wheels and tires and get rid of that chrome trim around the wheel wells. Also test fit the grille up front, and that looks great. Here's a rust spot at the leading edge of the hood. I hit that with some sandpaper and rust inhibitor, and then I'll hit it with some blue paint. And here's another area at the bottom edge of the A-pillar that's rusty. Again, it gets the same treatment. I'm taking a razor blade to this side trim and cutting off this clear and chrome bit. And then the material underneath, I'll be able to prep that and paint that body color. And then it's just a matter of masking and painting that strip blue to match the rest of the car. After painting the bow tie red, I masked that off and I'm ready to paint the rest of the grille blue. So here's the finished product. Got the grille painted up, got the Impala SS emblems on the car. The trim is painted body color, and got the blacked out Impala SS rims. It's looking good. Under the hood, we've got the LT1 engine. It's running pretty well for 140,000 miles. Had to do a couple things to the engine. So first off was a coil and ignition module and all new plugs and plug wires, and that cleaned up a misfire that the car had. And second was the water pump was weeping, so I had that replaced by a local shop, and also had them do the OptiSpark while they were at it, because that's behind the water pump. And then the exhaust manifolds, I got a new exhaust manifold for the passenger side, and on the driver's side there were some broken bolts, and they replaced those with fresh bolts and fixed the exhaust leaks at the manifolds on both sides. As I was doing work on the wagon, it developed an intermittent starting problem, and I spent a bit of time trying to diagnose it, and I wound up purchasing this Tech 2 clone from China, and this was a well-spent $250, especially when you consider a genuine Tech 2 is like $4 grand. And this actually really helped me diagnose the problem. It showed I didn't have any problems with any of the sensors, but when the car wouldn't start, this clone Tech 2 couldn't talk to the powertrain module. So it turns out I had a bad PCM. I got a new one from PCM for Less. They programmed it for me, and it just fits right in here below the air cleaner, and now the car starts perfectly. The interior is a little rough. We're missing some trim pieces, got some stains in the carpet, and the cluster is flaking out. The cluster is held in by 4 hex head bolts. These digital dashes are notorious for having the LCDs flake out. There's a pretty quick fix. You just disassemble the unit and clean some of the contacts inside. So first step is to get these Torx head screws out. And then from here we just take this piece off. So we want to clean these contacts with a Q-tip and some rubbing alcohol. And you can also touch up these 4 pads here with the soldering iron, the ones where the traces are visible coming out the bottom. This takes a steady hand and a light touch just to reflow the solder a little bit. After resoldering that area on the cluster, the digital display is no longer flaking out. Unfortunately, the wagon also needed a heater core, which it's a little easier if you take the passenger seat out, but it is definitely a difficult job to do. Got the interior cleaned up just a little bit and reinstalled some of the missing trim. So the handling of the wagon is just atrocious. It's got a ton of body roll. Spent a bunch of money on this Hotchkiss suspension kit. We've got a front and a rear anti-roll bar. And I went with the Hotchkiss lower control arms. These are a lot stiffer than stock. And the car also needs shocks, so I went with these Monroe severe service shocks. Alright, the old sway bar came out easily enough. And then the new sway bar just fits up under here in the same way. Alright, and the new sway bar goes in easily enough. Helps if you have a jack to get it into position. So reciprocating saw is one of my favorite tools to use when working on cars. This made quick work of the old shock where the top of the shock was really rusty, and there was really no other way to get the bolt off other than just cutting the top of the shock shaft. Alright, and that's the old shock out. And this is a good opportunity to hit all the grease fittings underneath the car while I'm doing the suspension update. The wagon handles really well for a 4,000-pound car. Stays really level in the turns.
So Dad, out of all the possible cars to build, why on earth would you choose a mid-90s B-body wagon?
Well, it's cheap, you know, it's at the bottom of its depreciation curve. It's got a V8, it's a cool wagon.
I'm down with the wagon part, but there are so many cooler wagons, like a Vista Cruiser from the 60s.
You want a vintage wagon.
Of course! How about a big block Dodge wagon with a 440?
Mopar wagon, huh?